Okay, first off, we just wanted to thank you both, Professor Atkinson and Professor Mohamed, for coming here today. You were both extremely well respected by our class, and we're all very excited to hear your words of wisdom as we move into this next chapter of our lives. And so with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to you all, since you're what the people want to see.
Thanks so much, Alexa and Ayan. Welcome everyone as you scroll through, and just pandemic, seeing faces that I haven't seen, and then certainly for me, seeing some faces that I haven't seen since fall of 2018. I can't even. So welcome. I will speak on behalf of myself and Saira to say that we are so excited and so pleased and just honored to be here and to share this, this last lecture with you, such as it is. Perhaps a bit of a misnomer, if only, I don't think either of us are viewing this as a lecture, but we'll do our best. We'll do our best. So first, just again, on behalf of Saira and myself, congratulations. I believe today is the last day of class. The last day of law school for you. That's amazing. The risk of sounding condescending, but hoping not to sound condescending. Again, we're so incredibly proud of you and just proud of this journey, right? To go from that 1L experience and to arrive at this moment is something important and huge, and it's something that you should celebrate. And I realize that it might be really difficult to reflect on it in these times, in these moments when your finals and papers and all kinds of things still ahead, and a bar exam and all these other things still ahead. But it's really, really something to feel good about, and I hope that you do. So here's what we're going to do today. We've worked out a little format here. So Saira and I have gathered together, sort of whittled down 2 pieces of advice that we would like to share with you. And so we're going to do that, and we're going to alternate. Saira will start. And then we'll leave some time left open, more of a QAC, right? Question, answer, and comment, and, maybe we'll have questions for you. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So with that said, Saira will start us off.
Thanks, Abbye, and thanks to Alexa and Ayan for inviting us here. As Abbye said, we're so grateful and honored to get to talk with you all today, and I'm just overjoyed to see your faces, all these familiar faces from fall of 2018 and that amazing cohort of 1Ls in my international law class in the spring of that year. I'm so happy to see you all, and those of you that I've gotten to know over the course of your 3 years after that. And all of you, even though I haven't met you, I've read about you on the Berkeley Law webpage and in the alumni magazine, and I've heard about the amazing things that you've done over these last 3 years. So I just feel so grateful to be with you today. So as Abbye said, we're going to offer some advice or life lessons as was assigned to us. So I'm going to start with this piece of advice, and it's allow yourself to take some chances. As you probably know by this point in your law school career, we lawyers are not known for being risk takers. Many of us were probably drawn to the law in the first place because we're risk averse, or maybe you didn't used to be risk averse, but then once you took a couple of classes, you started to worry about all the uncertainties around you, or maybe your friends and your family started to ask you questions about how to deal with the uncertainties around them. Lawyers know how to deal with risk, right? We see it ahead of time, we contract around it, we eliminate it. And we do this not only in our lawyering, we do this in our life too. How many years in advance are you asked to apply for clerkships? What is it now? 2, 3, 5, 10? I don't know. The job that you interview for at the beginning of your 2L year, it's supposed to be the job that you have, what, 3 years later, 4 years later? We plan in advance, right? So I wanted to start today by offering you 3 thoughts about risk taking. So the first kind of risk taking that I wanted to bring up is being willing to say out loud what you want. So when I started law school, I felt really ready to jump in. I had no idea of what I was getting myself into, but I was excited about it. I felt good about it. But I was really quickly put in my place. I found that the same couple of people spoke up in class every day. I was not one of them. The faculty member who was assigned to be my official faculty advisor, he told me that he read my application essay and that he thought it was naive and that probably one day I would grow up. I encountered just a few too many people who felt to me anyway like they were interested in sizing one another up and figuring out the way to impress the professor. And I didn't know how to do those things, and I wasn't particularly interested in doing so. And it really got to me. I had felt out of place in one way or another my whole life, but I never felt that way in a classroom. And there I was in my law school classes, and I felt out of place. I felt like I should be really quiet. I felt like I had no idea how everyone else seemed to know so much. Right at the beginning, everybody kept using the word dispositive. I'd never heard this word before. I had no idea how everyone knew to say it. People were talking about the law review. I had no idea what the law review was. I felt so unsure of myself, except that in class, I never said anything and I hardly ever got called on. I convinced myself that this must have been because I thought my professors glanced at my name and they thought maybe the first and last name was mixed up and they weren't sure, and they just didn't call on me in hopes of avoiding whatever discomfort it might have caused them when they had to wonder whether my name was like Ms. Mohamed or Mr. Saira, or like, I think they just didn't know what to do with me. So I ended up not getting called on very often my 1L year. So I sat back and I listened, and I actually felt like I understood what was going on. I was not involved in this conversation that was happening in front of me. And I didn't actually feel like anyone treated me like a person who could thrive in law school. But I felt like I understood what was happening in my classes. And so I decided to consider the possibility that I might actually understand what was going on in my classes. And at the same time that this was happening, I started doing a lot of volunteer work, pro bono work. This was in the early days after September 11th, and I started working on what was known then as special registration, where men from predominantly Arab and Muslim countries had to go to what was then the INS and show up and offer all of their immigration information, among other things. And so I felt like I know what's going on in my classes, and I'm really fulfilled with this work that I'm doing. And I started to learn these whole new ways of thinking about what was happening in front of me. And I started to at least ask the questions about why it was that only certain people were raising their hands in class and why only certain people seemed to feel that the profession belonged to them. And the other thing that I started to learn about in my first year of law school was that a person could become a law professor, not just by being plucked by the powers that be, but by doing the work. And I started to think about this when I went to a talk by my con law professor, who was Kenji Yoshino, toward the end of my first year on the subject of how to be a law professor. I felt really presumptuous showing up. As far as I could tell, law professors were mostly male and mostly white, and most of them were like related to other law professors, or they became law professors because the law professors they had in law school had called someone up and said, I have a guy for you. And then they got a job, and I knew no one was going to call anyone and say, I got a guy for you. So it felt presumptuous, but I thought, he's my con law professor, so I can sneak in the back and no one will know that I'm there. And what he described, it just sounded like my dream job. And I didn't say that out loud for years. I didn't tell anyone. It felt ridiculous to me to feel like I could actually do it. So I kept it to myself, and I sort of kept it in the back of my head as this secret plan. But after a few years, the idea of a dream job started to feel like it was potentially worth the risk of being presumptuous. It felt like it was worth the risk of saying what I wanted and potentially not getting it and being, embarrassed. for having said it. So I finally started to tell people that this was what I wanted to do, and discovered that at least some of those people wanted to support me and wanted to share their secrets with me of how to do it, and wanted to tell me that I could actually do a good job on it. And when I first started to do that, it felt like a huge leap, and it was a leap for me, but it was worth it. It's my dream job. I can't imagine what my life would have been like if I hadn't finally just said this thing out loud, even though it felt so presumptuous to say it. The second version of taking chances is that I hope you'll remember that what lawyers think is taking a chance is very different from what non-lawyers think is taking a chance. So I was a lawyer at the State Department before I became a law professor, and it was a really great job. It's a wonderful group of people. I know some in this group will experience that wonderful office and have in the past as well. But it wasn't my dream job. My dream job was to be a law professor by that point. And I was there for less than 2 years when I got an unexpected opportunity to work in the office of what's called the Special Envoy for Sudan. It seemed really exciting. It seemed like a really great opportunity. It was a short-term job, like 9-month job. So I asked my boss at my job at the State Department if I could do it as what's called a detail, where you like temporarily leave one position to go to another within the building. And I thought they'd say yes, and they said no. And at the time, I thought I was probably going to leave my job pretty soon anyway, because I wanted to be a law professor. So I thought I was going to do what's called a fellowship. And the person who's now my husband was pretty ready to leave DC by that point. So it felt to me like I could leave this job to go to the other job at the State Department. Now, this first job that I had at the State Department is one that people love and that people stay in, for 5 years, 10 years, their whole career. And I was leaving it in less than 2 years to take a job that was going to end in 9 months. And I didn't have my next job already lined up after that. And so many people thought it was just bananas, right? That I was leaving potentially a lifelong job for a job that was going to end in 9 months. And it made me sweat a little, it really started to make me wonder if I was making the wrong choice. But I had to remember that risk-taking for lawyers is very different from risk-taking for normal people. Leaving a job for one that is going to last 9 months, when you've graduated from law school, when you've applied for fellowships, when you know that you can navigate a little bit of uncertainty, right? Like, that is not a risky move. Taking a good job is not a risky move. It just seemed that way to so many people I know, because we are trained in many ways to look for the safer choice, right? To take that job that could last for a lifetime, even if you don't really want to stay there for a lifetime, right? To take the path that's going to have the next 5 years laid out for you. But you have to remember that risk-taking for lawyers is different, right? That we try to avoid that risk, and that you can listen to yourselves in those moments when you know you're making the right choice, even if other people are puzzled by what you're doing. And the third version of risk-taking that I'll talk about before I hand it back over to Abbye is this. I hope you'll stay open to taking chances, not just in your life and not just in your career choices, but in the substance of your work. And really what I mean to say in this last piece about risk-taking is, it's really scary sometimes to have hope, but you can, and you should. So for many of you, the confirmation of hearings of Brett Kavanaugh were a formative experience in those first few weeks of law school. You saw a process play out that seemed to scream out at you that you're not welcome in this profession, that the kind of conduct that you value and respect and demand of others isn't the same kind of conduct that's valued and respected and demanded in this profession. And yet you kept going, right? So why did you keep going if you felt like you were seeing a profession that wasn't yours, because you saw something that didn't seem right to you, and you also imagined some way of doing things differently. So when I say, I hope you'll give yourself the space to hope, I don't mean to be advising you to be a Pollyanna or to be engaging in what some scholars of critique would describe as the petty hope of daydreams emptied of all revolutionary potential. I don't mean to be aligning myself with the charge that everything has to be argued in a hopeful register. Instead, what I'm saying is this: just try to stay open to the possibility of change. It can be really scary to admit that change is possible, but it is a chance that you can take. It's what lawyers do, right? We dream up new possibilities. We come up with new combinations of words. We come up with new ways of understanding those words. We come up with new structures to build, or structures that should be torn down. So I want to read from you a couple of lines from the essay Confronting Empire by Arundhati Roy. So she writes, our strategy should be not only to confront empire, but to lay siege to it, to deprive it of oxygen, to shame it, to mock it with our art, our music, our literature, our stubbornness, our joy, our brilliance, our sheer relentlessness, and our ability to tell our own stories, stories that are different from the ones we've been brainwashed to believe. She continues, another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. What you've seen in the past year, it might be enough to make you think that that other world is not on her way. But I urge you to consider the possibility that it might be. I also hope that you won't become inured to the injustice and the cruelty that you see. Try to continue to see it as noteworthy. That's not to say that you should identify it as exceptional. Most of the injustice and cruelty that you see is systemic and structural. It's not exceptional. But I'm urging you to see it as worthy of your attention. I know you already do, but as you continue on in this work, I hope you will be able to remember that it is worthy of attention, that it is worthy of feeling shocked by it and horrified by it, and worthy of your dedication to making it different. So you don't have to call this hope. You can call it strategy, to paraphrase the anthropologist Orsanmi Burton. Call it transformation, call it your work, right? What else are we all doing here with these skills and with this power? What's the point of all of it, if not to have the audacity to try to build something better? This world and parts of this profession, I'm sorry to tell you this, and I think you already know it, it's gonna try to stamp it out of you. It's gonna try to stamp out that ability to see things differently from how they are. But you can take the risk of seeing the possibility that something will change and that you can change it. Abbye, over to you.
Goodness, Sarah, I needed that advice too, which is not uncommon. I daily need advice from Sarah Mohamed, but there it is. So my first piece of advice picks up where, unknowingly, picks up where Sarah left off. And it's a little broader in tone, which is to say that I encourage you all to stay open. As Sarah has just said, you know, there's so much in this world and in this work that will try to, I think you put it, stamp out your good intentions, stamp out your humanity, stamp out your energy, stamp you out. And so the advice is stay open to experiences, to the disappointments, to the personal, professional disappointments, to hurt, but also stay open to love. And when I say love, I mean whether it's love of your profession, love of doing your best, love of human beings, love of individuals, love of a cause, um, love of a purpose. And so I'd like to, illustrate this through the lens of my own failure to do that, and then some incremental progress in doing that. And I'll start by saying, and giving you this advice, I also give this advice to myself. I consider myself certainly a significant work in progress. Hence, the notion of giving you advice seems a little ridiculous, but there it is. So some of you know, before I went to law school, I was a public school teacher and I taught special ed. And in the 2 years before I applied to law school, I taught at an elementary school here in San Leandro. And we had a pull-out model of special education in which the students who had services, who had IEPs, as they're called, I would go get them. They would come to my room. It was literally a broom closet that had been turned into a classroom. Literally a broom closet that had been turned into a classroom. And so the kids would come, the younger kids, at the end of each session, I would walk them back and forth to their class. And then the older kids were supposed to come on their own. So there's this little boy in 5th grade and a little Black boy, I'll call him D. And, for me, there are two types of kids who seem to end up with special needs, special services deemed that. They're the kids who have special needs, genuinely have special needs, and then they're the kids who have been left behind and forgotten. And so at a certain point, once they are so far behind, they are marked as being special needs. So D was one of the latter. And, as you might imagine, by the time of 5th grade, of being tossed out of classrooms and forgotten, and God knows what was happening in his personal life, he didn't trust teachers. He thought teachers were the enemy, and probably rightly so in his experience. So I had a lot of work to do, and my work cut out for me to try to get him just to show up, right? Not have to go to the 5th grade class and be like, D, it's like 1 o'clock, you're supposed to come after lunch. But he wasn't coming. So I took that personally, right? I thought that, well, goodness, why isn't D coming to class? Like, D is so difficult. He's a problem. He makes my life at work difficult and hard. And he had his awesome teacher, Elaine Dent, who now teaches down in Los Angeles. And she, had taught for much longer than I had. And she had the gift of reaching out and meeting kids like D where they were and ushering them to where she was supposed to bring them. So my relationship with D ultimately broke down quite significantly over the course of the year. And most of it, if not all of it, was due to my own reaction to the difficulty of working with him, of dealing with him. And really, in hindsight, not having the skills yet as a teacher to understand that it was my job to stay open to him. And instead, I let my sort of personal feelings of failure, of not being able to reach him, of not inspiring in him the trust that I saw Elaine inspiring in him. And things never got significantly better, right? By the end of the school year, towards the end of the school year, our relationship had completely broken down. He wasn't coming. I had other students. And so if he didn't come, I would call Elaine on the phone and say, can you send him? And if he came or not, I was just like, I give up. I had closed to him, right? Completely closed to him at that point. So there was another little boy in Dee's class, super popular. And I think this must have happened, I'm trying to remember the month and of the year, but it must have been after spring break, because there was a period of time where everyone went away and this little boy went on a trip with his family drove down to Disneyland in a minivan, and they sat him in the back of the minivan, big family, sat him in the back of the minivan, and they were rear-ended. And this little boy ended up losing his life because he was in the very back. And so it was super traumatic, of course, for the school. This is a small elementary school. He had a little sister who was in 3rd grade. And he came from South Pacific heritage, right? So from what I understand of what the sort of mourning process was, there was a funeral for this little boy, and many of us from the school, including Dee, went to this funeral. And the funeral consisted of a lot of singing. I remember this sort of like beautiful, sort of haunting singing with people sitting in pews in the funeral home, and, you know, everyone mourning just this tremendous loss. And Dee was there at this funeral. And I don't know if someone dropped him off or what. I suspect maybe his mom was like, drop you off, or his parent or his guardian dropped him off. And he was sitting in the pew, and I was sitting several pews behind him, and I saw him and from behind, and I saw his, you know, thin little 5th grade shoulders sort of hunched into himself. And I had closed that door to him. Even in hindsight now, I probably should have just figured it out. But I watched him from behind, and I thought to myself, like, I had closed off any ability for us to connect in this moment. And he sat there by himself, hunched over. You know, we're all in this space listening to this gorgeous music and mourning with this young boy's family. And I had closed that door to getting up and moving forward and sitting next to him, because he didn't trust me, right? He didn't trust me in a much, arguably, an easier circumstance. So he wasn't going to trust me in that moment, or at least I didn't think that he was. And that I was never more sorry. I have never been more sorry in my life than in that moment. And I reflect on it a lot because I closed that door because it was hard, because he was difficult to deal with. But I was a grown person. I was my late 20s, and he was an 11-year-old boy, and I was the teacher, and it was my job to stay open to him in good and bad times, when it was easy and when it was hard. And I didn't do that. And I didn't do it. And, you know, I don't know where Dee is today. I hope he's well, but if he is, it's not because of anything that I did in my experience with him. So let me fast forward. That was a big lesson. So let me fast forward. So here's the lesson that involves many of you who I was fortunate enough to have in my contracts class in that fall of 2018. So I started at Berkeley in 2017, fall 2017. I taught my seminar, my debt seminar, right in my wheelhouse in the fall, and it was great and fabulous, and like, oh, what a great first experience being a law professor. Then comes 1L exams, you know how this goes at this point. And I was slated to teach big section contracts in the spring. That was it was a traumatic experience for me. Let me start by saying that, you know, it's teaching, like being a lawyer, like anything else, is a skill, and it's something that you have to continue to learn to do, and you gain skills over time. And so teaching a large section of a core doctrinal class to, you know, 101Ls is a skill unto itself, right? It's a skill that requires honing. And this was my first time doing it. So I tell you this story, not to suggest that I didn't have a ton to learn, because I did, and I tried to learn it. But in any case, things did not go so smoothly, to say the least. And, you know, I feel like, bless their hearts, the class of 2020 were very kind to me overall. But, you know, there was a little bit of, oh, there's blood in the water here. Let's just, you know, proceed in that way. And And so it was really hard. And when the evaluations came, I mean, those have been hands down the worst evaluations. Because of those evaluations, you know, I do not read comments anymore. I have not since that semester because they were brutal. Much of it justified in terms of the constructive criticism, but just kind of, you know, overall brutal. And I was super distraught after that. Saira can attest to that. She was one of the first people I went to, super distraught. And that instinct from my moment with D kicked in, right? I knew that I was going to teach contracts in the fall, so I was only going to have a summer to try to figure out how to improve what I needed to work on, sort of triage, work on my pedagogical skills, and then figure out, okay, how am I going to approach a new set of 101Ls who felt like, you know, who felt threatening, quite honestly, right? I was worried, I was afraid, and in hindsight, I think I was afraid of like D back then, sort of rejecting my effort and afraid of feeling that disappointment, but nevertheless staying open. Like, I'm not going to let this disappointment and worry sort of and failure keep me from continuing to stay open and to be open every day. So I don't know, I am not by nature a begrudging kind of person. You know, and it's in my nature also I crave human connection. And I didn't think that I could authentically walk into a new 1L class with like my, you know, I don't know, stereotypical hard-nosed law professor, I'm gonna embarrass you face on. That's not who I am as a human, and that's not who I wanted to be as a law professor. So I had to, so those of you in contracts, right, when you came in, I was in a sense a little at war with myself because I wanted to be open to all of you. And I was sort of fighting with myself, like, don't be defensive, don't. Remember the shoulders hunched over in the church pew, right? Don't be that person. What happened in the previous semester was what happened. Learn the lessons, filter it, feel the pain and the disappointment and the embarrassment and all the other stuff, and you know, take the good, a lot of good constructive growth, right? Take that and try to invest it in this group of people. And so I did that, and it helped, right? That I had a group of individuals who, you know, many of you, I certainly consider my friends now, right? Who I would have lost out on that experience if I had not kind of forced myself, sometimes on a daily basis, right? Stay open, be open. Each class is a new class. Try again. Someone rolled their eyes. Okay, let it go and try again. Think about why they're rolling their eyes. Is it their issue? Is it my issue? If it's my issue, fix it. If it's their issue, let it be, right? Everyone has their moment and who knows what they're going through. So that's all to say. And you know, I contrast that then, as I look at your faces now, I contrast that against that experience that I had, you know, I don't know, 7, 8 years prior, which is that, you know, I, as a law professor, as a teacher who believes that teaching is not just about imparting information, it's about developing a relationship and learning together, and developing a community. You can't develop that community if you're closed off to the human experience and to connecting with people in all their complexity, eye rolls or praise alike, right? So I encourage all of you to stay open, right? You'll be bombarded with a lot of negativity, have already been bombarded with a lot of negativity, and you'll undoubtedly experience failure and success, right? We all do in our own way, but stay open to the experience Stay open to the disappointment, stay open to the love, whatever love motivates you, whatever connection motivates you, stay open to it. Back to you, Saira.
Thanks, Abbye. So I'll say that I felt when we were asked to give this lecture, I will admit I felt really presumptuous in having any sort of life advice to give to any of you, but of course I said yes because it's an honor, but also because getting to be in a room with Abbye Atkinson is an invitation I do not say no to, whether it's a real room or a virtual one. And I learn from you, Abbye, something really important every time I talk to you. So thank you for that. My second piece of advice is, I think it's related to what Abbye so beautifully shared, and related to that first piece of advice I gave to you. It's also something that I always tell my 1Ls at the end of crim. So hi, mods 4, 5, 6. You may have heard this before. And it's this, let the easy stuff be easy and accept that the hard stuff is hard. So what do I mean by this? I'll start with a story about having a kid. So I had my first kid when I was a couple of years into my time as a faculty member. And at the time, a lot of my friends and close family had kids at that point, and I got a lot of advice. I heard from a lot of people, and one constant theme that I heard was how hard it was going to be, that there wasn't going to be any sleeping, and the days were just going to be dreadfully long, and that I'd be totally wiped out, and that babies weren't that fun until they got older, and that it's impossible to get out of the house with a newborn or with any size of baby, and you're never going to be able to find a babysitter, and it's really hard to find daycare. And like, I heard so much about all the things that were a drag. That might all be true, but it was so fun for me. I mean, I got lucky. I had a healthy baby. I had a really generous leave, but it was fun. And for those first few weeks after my kid was born, I kept wondering if I was doing something wrong. Like, why is this so much fun? And I felt like I shouldn't tell anybody. And I just kept wondering why everybody had been telling me so much about what a drag it was going to be to have a baby. And then it finally occurred to me, it didn't matter why anybody was saying this. I could just let it be easy. At some point, it was probably going to get hard. It has since then. But I wasn't at that stage. I wasn't in those moments at that point. And there was no reason to force it to be hard. It was just easy and fun. And so I went with it. And I know that you all know how to do that too. I mean, I've seen you, and I've had those conversations with you, at the beginning of law school, when maybe you came into my office and you said, I thought I was here to do environmental work, but I really want to know everything I can about criminal law and criminal law reform. And that felt easy and natural, and maybe you fought it for a while, and then you finally let it be and decided that you could just be happy in what was making you feel really excited. You could just love what you loved and go with it. Or maybe you came to law school convinced that you'd never fit, convinced it was just a thing that you had to get through in order to finally be a lawyer. And then, without quite realizing how it happened, you found a fit in what you wanted to do, and you found a group of people who felt like your family. So when you get those easy moments, just go with it and enjoy it. And don't worry if someone else told you they were going to be hard. You don't have to fight it when they're really good. Now, the flip side of that is, of course, that the hard times are going to come. You know that too. You spent nearly half of your law school career in the midst of this pandemic. You witnessed an insurrection in the capital of the United States in your last semester here. You witnessed an attempt to put down a movement for democracy in Hong Kong. You've seen the violent, abhorrent, unjustifiable deaths of far too many Black and brown people who were just going about their lives, right? Who were driving or walking or jogging or sleeping. And when the hard times come, as you know they're going to, it's okay to admit that they're hard. It's not soft, it's not weak to acknowledge when something is hard. It might even be vital to do it. So where's the advice in all this? Well, one hope, I guess, maybe more than a piece of advice, is that I hope you will keep taking care of the people around you. You already do this, you've already done this. I've seen you share notes and cook for one another and grieve one another's losses and cheer for one another as you achieve victories for clients and get your dream jobs and create new families. I've seen you lock arms in solidarity with one another. I've seen you support one another. But one thing to remember is that you need to not only take care of others, you are all really good at that, right? This is a law school where 1 year is more about slips than it is about classes. The students graduating this year, you all logged more than 26,000 hours of pro bono work during your time here. This is extraordinary, you guys, right? I'm not going to mention what last year's number is, but the fact that you have done this is extraordinary. It's even more extraordinary given the fact that nearly half of this had to be done virtually, right? Like, you guys are amazing at thinking about other people. But please remember also that when things are hard, you got to take care of yourselves too. Being a lawyer is such a gratifying thing. It's an amazing profession. I'm so excited for all of you to be a part of it, but it's also hard. It's intellectually challenging, as you know, and it's emotionally challenging, as you know too. It's really hard and confusing sometimes to feel like you're too close to a system that you're fighting. It's hard to feel like you're not able to fight the way you want to fight. It's hard to feel like you're not doing enough for your client. It's hard to feel like it hurts to open yourself up to the people around you. You're never going to be able to do this work unless you let yourself rest sometimes, unless you let yourself recharge and come back to that work, unless you let yourself be healthy, unless you let yourself recognize when things are really hard. There is no shame in that, right? Being healthy and happy, it doesn't mean that you're working any less rigorously. You also need to let other people take care of you, let other people extend their care and their friendship and their love to you. Doing that doesn't mean that you can't do it on your own. It just means that you're lucky enough to not have to do it on your own. Beyond that, I do hope that you'll let yourself feel it when it's hard. Don't lose track of where your heart is. Being a lawyer is an intense intellectual pursuit. Your mind is challenged and stretched and active. And as I told 1/3 of you a few years ago, that is a gift. That constant learning, that constant challenge, it's a huge gift. Your minds will never want for challenge. But being a lawyer is a lot more than just reasoning through those knotty puzzles or spotting the relevant issues. It is a humanistic endeavor. It's one that involves love. It's one that involves compassion if you're doing it right. It's one that requires you to understand hurt. And it's one that demands that you work not just through your head, but through your heart. I have found over the years, and you've probably felt this too, that this is a profession that can confuse hardness with rigor, right? There's this idea that if you feel something, then you're incapable of sharp legal analysis. This idea that if you're unkind, you're showing that you're such a serious person that you can't be bothered with social niceties. This idea that sharpness is a sign of strength, that if you care about relationships, that if you find joy and sadness and even substantive inspiration from art or music or paintings or film or fiction, then you're not engaging in the work with the analytic rigor that you're supposed to be using. Just reject all of that. Get rid of it. Don't let it infect how you think. Don't let it infect how you work. And use the power that you have to instill in anyone that you can that this is not only a thinking profession, but it's a feeling one too. Being a lawyer is about what's in your heart. So please don't lose touch with that. Let connection with yourself and with your others, with the others around you, and with art, let it ground you and ground your work in the humanistic endeavor of the law. Let yourself experience that pain and that hurt and the devastation of those hard moments, and also relish and take joy in those easy ones too. Let yourself see that beauty and the grace in those moments. Back to you, Abbye.
Yes. Okay, so the final bit of advice is kind of I'm going to reveal a secret, and then I'm going to give some advice. I don't know. I was trying to think of a more contemporary movie to make a comparison to, but you know how, but I can only, it keeps coming to mind is the M. Night Shyamalan Sixth Sense, right? And it has this like surprise ending, which, you know, maybe I won't ruin for those of you who haven't seen it. So I have a secret to share with you. You guys, each and every one of you are the prize. And more than that, you were the prize from day one. Isn't that wild? Law school will tell you, right? You come into law school and I don't know, it is what it is. Who knows why the system is set up as it is, but for some reason it is. And the thing is, like, from day one, you all entered into this institution as extremely smart and accomplished and erudite and amazing human beings, regardless of your background, regardless of your political beliefs, regardless of any number of characteristics that might otherwise inform some people's views about who you are. And I think one of the tough, and I've said this to some of you before, one of the hardest things then about teaching in the first year is to go from, to watch the degradation of spirit that happens inevitably, and unfortunately kind of on purpose in some ways. And to watch, again, that first day room full of people where you say, write on your card all the things you are. And it's like the card isn't big enough to hold all the accomplishments that you all bring. And then it's like, oh, but you know, what's the holding of this case? And your worth is based on whether or not you can regurgitate the holding in the moment that, you know, someone like me asks you to. So the secret that it's a secret of, you know, hopefully maybe just to some of you, if not all of you, but, you know, just like you were a prize the day you were accepted, the day the admissions committee said, oh, this person should come to Berkeley Law. You were a prize on day one. You were a prize in December of 2018, early December of 2018. You were a prize the day your grades came out. You were a prize in your 2L year. and you are a prize today, regardless of what happens in the coming weeks. And you're a prize whether or not you're going to work at a big firm, or you're clerking, or you're doing pro bono work, or you don't have a job yet, or any number of sort of outcome, usually outcome determinative metrics. So that's the secret. And it's something that I believe very deeply in. And my deepest wish for you, for each of you, is that you internalize that when you go out into the world and you're at fancy law firm X or clerkship Y or public defender office Z, wherever you go, walk in that room and do the work that you can do like no other, and own that you are literally a prize in that institution, wherever it may be. So that's the secret. So then the which I guess kind of went into more advice, right? But here's the advice, and I will keep it short. Play the long game. That said, God willing, it's a long, fruitful, complex, but largely positive life for each of you. And sometimes each individual thing or accomplishment can feel like it's everything and then it doesn't happen. Or it's everything and you get it, and when you start, you're kind of like, I kind of still feel the same as I did before, right? That I won the race and I still, as my mom would say, wherever you go, there you are. So play the long game, right? Live a full and as well-balanced as possible a life as you can. You know, the search for the next A, so to speak, will not stop. You'll go to wherever places where there'll still be this sorting of people, you know, ranks, what have you. And that's the, you know, the world that we live in. And as Saira says, you know, we can try to change the things that don't make sense, but it's a slow process. But play the long game. Take each moment, each success and failure in stride. Think about, you know, a life well lived overall, rather than, you know, a clerkship gained or whatever, you know, our law specific goals and metrics might be. So I will stop there. We have a couple minutes. So I think, so Ayan and Alexa, you wanted to do some form of Q&A or comment?
Yes, thank you both. That was absolutely incredible. Definitely some well-needed advice, especially about risk-taking and being open to all experiences, because I know that's definitely something I personally struggle with. So that was very meaningful and impactful. So thank you both. I know we are short on time, so maybe we can get one or two questions in or comments if anybody wants to raise their hand.
Alexa, Saira, actually, I forgot. Saira also has some closing thoughts for the room as well. So I just want to throw that out there.
Well, they're just brief thoughts, and it's really to say two things. So one is that at some point in the next few weeks, maybe after you're done with your exams and you can take a few minutes, try to just close your eyes for a minute and think about who you were when you started law school. Try to remember who that person was. Try to remember the things that you were excited about, the things that you were dreading, the way that you imagined not just those few years going, but what you imagined for your career, and try to hold on to some of it. You know, of course, you start law school and you learn so much, and you discover new people and you discover new interests, and by remembering who you were, that's not to suggest that you weren't supposed to change, but try to keep in your pocket just a little bit of who you were way back when. The second is this: we're so excited for you and we're so happy for you. And we're so proud of you. And we also know that when you first came to this law school, this was not the ending that you imagined. This was not the graduation that you imagined. And as much as you must be so excited, and you should be so excited and proud and just enthusiastic about all that's coming in the future, it might feel a little disappointing too to be doing it this way. So I'll say this: you're entering the legal profession, and we might like to know what the next 5 or 10 or 20 years are going to look like. But you also know that the best lawyers know how to thrive on unsteady terrain, and how to do it with grace and with grit, and how to see the beauty and the possibility in all of it. And you have absolutely done that in the course of your time at Berkeley Law. So congratulate yourself on all of it, and have fun at some point. Celebrate your graduation like it deserves to be celebrated.
So I don't see any raised hands as of yet. So I guess in that case, I'll take us home. And I want to make 3 closing remarks. First is, my classmates know I use this term a lot, but I really do mean this here. Both you, Professor Atkinson, you, Professor Mohamed, are both the GOATs, the greatest of all time professors. When we came to law school, so many of us saw ourselves in you. I'll be honest, I never saw like a Desi lawyer or a South Asian lawyer before. And starting law school and, having Professor Saira, then Sood, and, meeting you, Professor Mohamed, that was an experience to me that was really formative and made me feel like I belonged. Having a professor that drafts constitutions, right? Professor Atkinson, you're testifying before Congress, and Professor Ross is getting a call from Joe Biden to be on some commission, right? Like, that's really, really cool, and it really means a lot to all of us. And finally, and if you guys would indulge me, my classmates, this is probably the last time we'll be together before graduation, and God knows that they're not giving me or Alexa any pulpit talk at graduation. So I thought I'd mention here that it's been a pleasure serving as your class presidents. It hasn't been easy. The remote world has been difficult to manage. The administration has been perhaps equally as difficult to manage at some points. But it's been a pleasure. And, while of course, we joke about uncompensated labor all the time, your support and your encouragement was more compensation than we could ever want or deserve. So thank you guys for that.
Thank you all.
Thank
And congratulations.
you.
Woo.